At dinner with my parents, she said, "Your son's sweet, but I'm still exploring my options." While holding my hand, I let go, stood up, and said, "We should go." While my parents watched her in shock, drove her home without a word. While she was trying to explain at her door, I said, "You're free to explore now," and left. Hey viewers, before we continue with the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want more stories like this. Thanks. The dashboard clock glowed 6:58 p.m., 2 minutes early. I adjusted the bottle of Chardonnay on the passenger seat, my mom's favorite, and glanced at Chloe. She was scrolling, the blue light from her phone casting sharp angles across her face. A thumbnail flickered a comedian's video. "You ready?" I asked, my voice too loud in the quiet car. "Yeah, totally," she replied without looking up. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Just let me finish this." I watched her for a moment. She'd been quiet, distracted all week. When I asked about it yesterday, she waved a hand. "Just work stuff, Mark. You know how it is." I believed her. I always believed her. I had spent the afternoon cleaning my apartment, imagining a version of tonight where, after dessert, I'd bring up the idea of her moving in. I had the logic laid out. My place was bigger, closer to her job, made financial sense. I'd practiced the speech in the shower. It's the next logical step. "Okay, let's go," she said finally, dropping her phone into her purse with a sigh. She gave me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. The walk to the front door felt normal. My childhood home smelled the same: lemon polish, slow-cooked roast, and the faint, comforting scent of old books. My mom, Linda, enveloped me in a hug, then held Chloe at arm's length. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. That color is fantastic on you." "Thanks, Linda," Chloe said, her social charm clicking on. She handed over the wine. "For you." My dad, Robert, emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. A firm handshake for me, a warm, lingering squeeze for Chloe. "The maestro is almost finished. Have a seat, you two." We settled in the living room. The good glasses were out. Sinatra played softly from the old stereo. It was a scene from my dreams of a stable future. Chloe sat close, her leg pressed against mine. My earlier anxiety began to loosen. See, everything was fine. Dinner was my dad's famous pot roast, carrots and potatoes cooked to buttery perfection. Conversation was easy, a gentle volley. Dad asked about the new software rollout at my firm. Mom asked Chloe about the big charity gala she was helping to plan. "It's going to be incredible," Chloe said, her hands moving through the air. "We've got a silent auction item, a weekend ski trip to Aspen. I'm this close to stealing it for myself." She laughed, and my parents laughed with her. She was luminous, the center of gravity at the table. I simply watched, content to orbit her. Then my mom poured more wine and asked the question I'd been dreading. "So, you two?" she began, her voice warm with curiosity. "We don't like to pry, but any big plans on the horizon? You seem so wonderfully settled." My heart skipped a beat. I felt Chloe's hand find mine under the table. Her fingers were cool. I took it as a sign, a squeeze of solidarity. I opened my mouth to deliver my rehearsed logical spiel, but Chloe spoke first. She leaned forward slightly, her voice confidential, almost philosophical. "You know, Linda, that's such a great question." She paused, glancing from my mom to my dad, then down at our joined hands on the tablecloth. She gave my hand a patronizing little pat. "Mark is the sweetest man I've ever known. Truly so kind, so stable," she said. Stable, as if it were a benign medical condition. "He's like a perfect cozy fireplace." I felt a cold trickle start in my stomach. Her gaze drifted to the window, as if seeing a more exciting world out there. "But I'm just at a point in my life where I need to be sure about everything. I'm young, well, youngish." She let out a tinkling laugh that felt like shattering glass. "I feel like I owe it to myself to, well, to keep exploring my options. You understand, right?" The world did not shatter. It did not go dark. It became hyper-focused, crystalline in its cruelty. I noticed the speck of paprika on the tablecloth near my plate. I noticed the slow, horrified dip of my mother's smile. I noticed my father's fork freeze halfway to his mouth. I felt the weight of Chloe's hand on mine, a dead, heavy thing, exploring my options. The words hung in the air, mingling with the scent of roast and gravy. She had just told my parents, the two people who loved me most in this world, that their son was a temporary placeholder, a nice, cozy fireplace while she shopped for a roaring, destructive bonfire. A profound silence swallowed the room. The only sound was the faint swing of "Fly Me to the Moon" from the living room. I looked at her hands. Her slim, manicured fingers lay over my broader, workmanlike ones, a public display of affection that, in that moment, was the most violent act of disrespect I had ever experienced. Calmly, without a word, I slid my hand out from under hers. The sound of my chair scraping against the hardwood floor was a gunshot in the quiet. I stood, movements mechanical, precise. I looked at my parents. My mother's eyes were wide, glistening. My father's face was a mask of stone, jaw clenched. "We should go," I said. My voice was flat, alien even to me, holding no anger, no tremor. It was simply a statement of fact. I walked around the table and pulled out Chloe's chair for her. She was staring up at me, her confident expression finally cracking into confusion. "Mark, what are you—" "We're leaving," I repeated, not looking at her. I looked at my dad. He gave me the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. An understanding, a quiet transfer of dignity. I guided Chloe, now flustered and silent, from her chair. I collected her purse from the sideboard. I didn't look at my mom. I couldn't. "Thank you for dinner," I said to the space between them. "It was excellent." And then I led the ghost of my relationship out of my parents' house, leaving the ruins of the future I'd imagined cooling on the dining room table. The cold night air hit us like a slap. Chloe finally found her voice. "Mark, stop. What was that? You're being ridiculous." I didn't answer. I unlocked the car, slid into the driver's seat, and started the engine. She stood outside for a moment before yanking open the passenger door and sliding in. "Are you serious right now?" she demanded, confusion rapidly morphing into anger. "You just dragged me out of there because of one little comment." I pulled out of the driveway. The streets of my parents' neighborhood were dark and quiet. "It wasn't a little comment, Chloe," I said, eyes on the road, voice still that terrifyingly calm monotone. "Oh my God, you are so sensitive," she exploded, throwing her hands up. "I was just being honest with them. I was being real. Isn't that what you always say you want? Honesty." "Honesty," I repeated. Not a question, just a word. Tasting of ash. Yes, I was telling them the truth. "I love you, Mark. You know I do. But love isn't always enough. There's a whole world out there. I have needs. I have curiosities. Is it a crime to want to be sure?" I signaled a turn. The click-clack of the blinker was the loudest sound in the world. "So I'm an experiment," I said. It wasn't an accusation, it was a conclusion. "No, don't put words in my mouth. You're my foundation. But even foundations get inspected, right? To make sure they can handle what's being built on them." The metaphor was staggeringly selfish. It almost broke through my numbness. Almost. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "You humiliated me," I said, words quiet in front of my parents. "You reduced 2 years of my life to a trial run for you." "I did not. You're catastrophizing. They adore me. They understood what I meant. You're just choosing to be hurt because you're scared of anything that isn't your perfect, planned-out little life." The floodgates opened. For 20 minutes she spun. Her words were a vortex of justification, self-pity, and veiled insults disguised as concern. "You're taking this the wrong way. I just meant I need to grow as a person, and you're so content. It's not you, it's me wanting to experience more of life before I settle. Can't you see this is healthy? This is modern dating." "You're so sweet, Mark, but sweetness can be passive." I drove. I didn't look at her. I didn't interrupt. I just absorbed the torrent, letting each word wash over me and solidify the ice in my chest. This was who she was. This had always been who she was. I had just been too cozy by he fireplace to feel the draft. We reached her apartment building. I pulled into a visitor spot and put the car in park. The engine idled. The silence returned, heavier now, saturated with her spent rhetoric. She looked at me, expecting a response, a fight, tears, begging, something she could manipulate or dominate. I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out. I walked around the car and opened her door, a final automatic act of courtesy. She got out, searching my face. "Mark, talk to me, please." I looked at her, then really looked at the girl I'd thought I'd build that logical future with. I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just a vast, empty clarity. She took a step toward me, reaching out a hand to touch my arm. I took a deliberate step back, out of her reach. Her eyes widened. That was the first thing that truly seemed to scare her. My physical withdrawal, done with calm intent. I met her gaze. My voice was quiet, final, and utterly clean of emotion. "You're free to explore now." I turned, got back into my car, and closed the door. In the rearview mirror, I saw her standing on the curb, frozen, one hand still slightly outstretched. I didn't wait to see if she moved. I drove away, and with every block, the weight in the car lessened until it was just me, the road, and a silence no longer filled with her excuses, but with a profound, burgeoning peace. The silence in my apartment was different now. Before, it had been passive, a space waiting for the sound of her key in the low. CK, her laughter, her critiques of my movie choices. Now it was active. It was mine. I didn't break down. I didn't throw things. I stood in the middle of the living room, the same room where I'd imagined us discussing floor plans, and just breathed, The numbness was a cocoon. Inside it, something very quiet and very decisive was knitting itself back together. My phone buzzed on the counter. Mom. I picked it up. Mark, honey, are you? I'm okay, Mom, I said, cutting her off gently. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. It's over. A pause on her end filled with a mother's wordless anguish. What she said at my table. I know, I said, don't, please, I just need to not talk about it right now. Okay, she whispered. Okay, we're here. I hung up. The next action felt instinctive, surgical. I opened my phone, navigated to her contact, a picture of her laughing at the beach, a moment I now knew was just a scene in her ongoing exploration. I blocked her number. I opened Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, every digital tether, blocked, unfollowed. It took less than 3 minutes. I wasn't angry. I was decontaminating a space. The first night, I slept like the dead. The second, I woke at 3 a.m., the memory of her words in my parents' dining room playing on a cold, clear loop. Not with pain, but with sharp analytical clarity. Exploring my options. I saw my father's frozen fork, my mother's shattered smile. I let the humiliation wash over me, through me. I didn't HT it. I observed it like a scientist studying a toxic sample. And then, as dawn light bled gray through the blinds, it was done. The sample was logged. The feeling was spent. I didn't call in sick to work. I went. I coded, attended meetings, ate lunch at my desk. The world kept turning. My hands knew the keyboard. My logic could still untangle complex problems. This was a relief. The real work began after 5 p.m. I joined a gym, not the one I'd casually used before, but a serious, no-nonsense place with heavy bags and racks of free weights. I didn't know what I was doing. I hired a trainer for 3 sessions just to learn form. The first time I deadlifted, a weight that felt impossible, muscles screaming, vision spotting. I thought of her patting my hand, sweet, stable. I locked out the lift. The crash of the plates on the floor was the most satisfying sound I'd heard in years. I let my friends know in a group text that Chloe and I were done. No drama, just different paths, I wrote. They offered to get drinks to let me vent. I declined. Soon, I promised. Instead, I called James, an old college friend who'd moved to the city last year. We drifted over burgers and beers. We didn't talk about her. We talked about the terrible startup he worked for, the absurdity of modern marketing, the new season of that sci-fi show we both loved. It was easy, undramatic. Friendship without an audit. I enrolled in an online certification course for a new programming framework, something I'd put off for a year, citing being too busy. Now my evenings had a new architecture: gym, study, cook. I learned to make pan-seared salmon with crisp skin. I perfected a garlic cream sauce. I ate at my kitchen island listening to history podcasts, and the meal was perfect because I had made it for me. Weeks bled into months. The season changed. The sharp, cold clarity of betrayal softened into a simple, unattractive fact of my history, like a scar you forget you have. I thought of her less and less. When I did, it was without heat. She was a person who had made a choice. I was a person who had accepted it. The first whisper of karma came on a rainy Tuesday. I was meeting James for coffee and he was late, fidgeting with his phone when he arrived. Sorry, he said, sliding into the booth. Got sucked into the drama vortex. I raised an eyebrow, sipping my black coffee. Mutual acquaintance, he said, choosing his words carefully. He knew I'd blocked the whole constellation of her life. Apparently, Chloe's new thing was intense. I said nothing. I didn't ask. My silence was an open door he could choose to walk through or not. He sighed. Guy named Jason, some entrepreneur, sells like imported flashlight batteries or something on the internet. Drives at least a Maserati. Total vibe guy. I waited. Seems like he's her option. She's exploring. James continued, watching me. From what I hear, it's a roller coaster. 1 week they're in Vegas. The next she's crying at brunch B. 'Cause he doesn't do labels. Her friends are exhausted. I felt a distant, faint ripple. Not Sean and Freya. It was more specific recognition. The unstable, flashy bonfire she'd traded her cozy fireplace for was predictably burning everything around it. It was the logical outcome of her search for something that wasn't sweet. I said finally. James laughed. I repeated, looking out the window at rain streaking the glass. She wanted excitement. Sounds like she found it. James shook his head, a slow smile spreading. You're different, man. Am I? Yeah. The old Mark would have been worried. Would have asked 5 more questions just to make sure she was okay. The old Mark, he was right. That man had died politely at a dinner table months ago. I'm not responsible for her choices, I said. And it was the simplest, truest thing I'd said in a long time. I changed the subject to James's job search. The ripple had settled. The pond was still. The seasons turned again. A year had passed. The certification was on my LinkedIn profile. My salary had increased. My body had changed, not into a bodybuilder's, but into something firmer, more capable. The silence in my apartment was now a companion, not a void. Karma did not arrive with a bang. It seeped in through the cracks, reported not by her, but by the faint residual echoes of our once shared world. I saw Mia, her best friend, at a grocery store. Turned my cart down the cereal aisle to avoid her, but she'd seen MBR There was a tight, worn look around her eyes. She gave me a small, awkward wave. I nodded back, a neutral acknowledgement, and kept moving. A month later, James reported that Mia and Chloe had a massive blowout and weren't speaking. The reason was Jason. The social media glimpses seen through the reluctant windows of friends who hadn't been purged told a silent story. The lavish dinners and club photos stopped. The posts became infrequent, then erratic. A quote about betrayal, a blurry photo of a wine glass at home, then nothing for weeks. The final report came from the most reliable source, cold, hard public data. Bored one evening, waiting for code to compile, I did a thing I hadn't allowed myself to do before. I looked up Jason's business. It was easy to find, a splashy website full of stock photos and words like disrupt and synergy. A few clicks deeper, past the facade, to state business records. His LLC had been dissolved 6 months prior for non-payment of fees. A comment on a local business forum, dated just last week. Scammer. Took orders, never delivered. A void. So, the bonfire had consumed its own fuel and sputtered out. It was neither satisfying nor sad. It was a fact, as neutral as the weather. The option had been explored. It had been found wanting. The first direct contact was a text, a number not saved in my phone, but whose area code I knew. It arrived on a Sunday morning. I was reading, the sun warm on my back. Unknown number. Mark, it's Chloe. I know I probably shouldn't be texting you. I think I made a terrible mistake. Can we talk? The words sat on my screen. I felt nothing. No spike in heartbeat, no tightening in my chest. They were just pixels. I watched the ellipsis appear, then disappear. She was waiting. I put the phone face down on the table. I finished my chapter. I made another cup of coffee. I watched a bird build a nest in the tree outside my window. The phone buzzed again. 2 hours later. Unknown number. Please. I picked up the phone. I didn't delete the messages. I opened the contact, created a new entry, and named it Do Not Answer. I saved the number, then I blocked it. The action felt hygienic. I was not ignoring her out of pain. I was filtering a distraction the way I'd filter spam from my inbox. Her mistake was now hers to live with. My peace was mine to protect. The two were no longer connected. The exploration was over, and I was no longer uncharted territory. I was my own sovereign nation, with closed borders. The voicemail arrived a week later. I was reviewing blueprints for a deck I planned to build on my tiny patio, a tangible project for my tangible life. My phone lit up with the Do Not Answer identifier. I let it go to voicemail, finished measuring a joist span, then played it on speaker as I cleaned my tools. Her voice was thin, watery, stripped of its performative confidence. Mark, it's me. I know you probably hate me. I need you to know I'm sorry. I was scared and stupid and young, and I said the most horrible thing to the best person I've ever known. You were my home. I didn't know what I had until I set it on fire. Please, can you just call me back? I'm so lost. There was a wet sniffling sound, then the click. I saved the voicemail, not as a treasured memento, but as a benchmark. A reminder of the tonal whiplash from smug dismissal at my parents' table to this raw need. It was useful data. I archived it and moved on. The friend intervention came next. Mia's name flashed on my screen. I almost let it go, but curiosity, cold and clinical, won out. Mark, she began, her voice strained with false, bright sympathy. Hi, how are you? I'm well, Mia. What can I do for you? I kept my tone polite, impersonal, like a bank teller. A pause. She wasn't used to me setting the frame. Well, I'm calling about Chloe. I assumed she's really not doing well, Mark. Like, really not well. That guy Jason, he was a nightmare. Took money from her, lied about everything. It was all a facade. She's completely wrecked. I'm aware he was unsuccessful, I said. Another pause. My lack of emotional donation was throwing her script. Right. Well, she's hurting. She's alone. Her friends. A lot of us are just tired of the drama. You know, she needs someone stable. I waited. Look. Mia pushed, her voice hardening. I know what she did was shitty, at that dinner. God, but would it kill you to show a little compassion? To just talk to her? You were together or 2 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the city lights. Mia, my compassion was spent a long time ago. I'm not responsible for the consequences of her choices. She's free to explore. Remember that freedom includes facing the results of the exploration. That's cold, Mark. It's factual, I corrected, my voice even. Is there anything else? She hung up. The texts started that night. They pulsed through the silence of my apartment like little distress flares from a ship I was no longer aboard. Do not answer. Why won't you answer me? I said I was sorry. Do not answer. You were never this cruel. You've changed. Do not answer. Is this your revenge? To just ignore me while I'm falling apart? I didn't block the new number. The messages were like weather reports from a hurricane that had already passed over me. I read them with detached interest. The subtext was clear. Her pain was now my moral failing. The finale was a Thursday evening. I was prepping vegetables, a knife moving in a steady rhythm against the cutting board, when the buzzer for my apartment building rang. I ignored it. It rang again, long and insistent. Then a third time, frantic and staccato. A sigh escaped me, not of annoyance, but of mild inconvenience. I wiped my hands, walked to the intercom, and pressed the button without speaking. Mark, it's me. I know you're there. Please, I need to see you. Her voice was frayed, trembling through the Eep speaker. I said nothing. I released the button. The buzzer screamed again, a long, desperate wail. I knew my neighbors would complain. The path of least resistance for my peace was a brief, firm interaction. I buzzed her in. I didn't open my apartment door wide. I stood in the frame, arms crossed, a barrier. She looked diminished. Her clothes were rumpled, her eyes smudged. The vibrant, assessing energy was gone, replaced by a jittery need. You wouldn't answer my calls, she said, voice accusatory. No, I agreed. Why? How can you just shut me out, after everything? She took a step forward. I didn't retreat, but my posture didn't yield an inch. She stopped. You asked for your freedom, I stated. You have it. This, I gestured vaguely between us, isn't my problem, not your problem. A hysterical laugh bubbled out of her. I'm hurting, Mark. The man I left you for was a con artist. He's gone. My friends are gone. I have nothing. I remained silent, letting her words hang in the hallway. Don't you see? She pleaded, tears starting. It was all a mistake. A huge, stupid mistake. You were right. You were always right. Stable is good. Sweet is good. I was an idiot. I want to come home. The word home landed with a thud. It meant my apartment, my life. The stability she'd publicly dismissed. It was not an apology. It was a requisition order. This isn't your home, I said, my voice low and final. Her face crumpled, then hardened. The tears dried up, replaced by a flash of the old, frustrated entitlement. The raw need had gotten her nowhere, so she switched tactics. You were never this cold. What's wrong with you? She snapped, voice rising. Did I break you that badly? Is that it? You're just this empty, bitter shell now? I said I was sorry. What more do you want from me? There it was, the true colors. The anger that emerged when her manipulation failed. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry it didn't work out for her. She wanted me to provide absolution and shelter. My refusal was a personal offense. I looked at her, this furious, unraveling stranger in my hallway. I felt a profound, quiet certainty. I don't want anything from you, Chloe, I said, my tone utterly flat. Not a thing. The simplicity of it deflated her. The anger seeped away, leaving her looking small and confused. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Goodbye, I said, not as a wish, but as a description. I closed the door. I heard a muffled sob, then the sound of her footsteps retreating down the hall. I returned to my kitchen, picked up my knife, and finished dicing the onion. The tears in my eyes were from the vegetable, nothing more. Saturday morning, sunlight streamed through the high glass canopy of the city's bustling farmers market. The air smelled of fresh bread, roasted coffee, and rain-washed strawberries. I held a woven basket in one hand, Sarah's hand in the other. Sarah was a landscape architect I'd met through a work project. She had a calm, grounded energy and a smile that felt like a genuine discovery, not a performance. We'd been dating for 4 months. It was easy, quiet, mutual. We were debating the merits of heirloom tomatoes versus perfectly round ones. When I felt a gaze on me, a prickling, familiar intensity, I looked up. Chloe was standing 10 feet away near a flower stall. She held a single, overpriced latte. She looked put together, but in a strained way, like a sheet pulled too tight. Her eyes were fixed on me, then flicked to Sarah, then to our joined hands. A complex calculation of loss and envy flashed across her face before she locked it down. Sarah, sensing my shift, followed my gaze. Friend of yours? She asked, her voice mild. Someone I used to know, I said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. It's fine. But Chloe was already crossing the space between us. She ignored Sarah completely, eyes laser-focused on me with desperate determination. "Mark." "Hi, Chloe." I nodded. An awkward beat. The market swirled around us. Laughter, bartering, a child's squeal. Can we please just get a coffee, talk as friends?" The words tumbled out, rehearsed and fragile. Sarah politely studied a display of artisan honey, giving us a semblance of privacy without moving away. Her presence was a quiet anchor. "No," I said. The word was not harsh, it was simply definitive, like stating the sky was blue. Her composure cracked at the edges. Why are you doing this?" I said sorry. I've been sorry. I miss you. I miss us." I took a slow breath, the scent of soil and basil filling my lungs. I looked at her, truly looked, and felt nothing but faint, distant pity for the ghost she was chasing. "Chloe, no," I said, my voice calm and clear. "This is Sarah." I gestured lightly to my side. Sarah offered a small, polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, a protective reflex. Chloe's eyes finally darted to Sarah, really seeing her for the first time. The easy confidence, the lack of neediness, the way she stood with me, not leaning on me. A fresh wave of desperation hit her. I miss you," she repeated. The statement sounded hollow now, a script with no audience. I looked at her, and in that moment I achieved the final, absolute form of moving on. I spoke the pure, unvarnished truth. Not to hurt her, but because it was the only thing left in me pertaining to her. "I don't think about you," I said. It was neither a boast nor a barb. It was a report from the interior of my life. "I wish you well, Chloe, truly, but please don't contact me again." I turned my body slightly, a physical punctuation to the sentence. I looked at Sarah, and my entire demeanor shifted, softened. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice warming for the first time in the exchange. "The bakery stall with the sourdough is this way. I think we're getting close." Sarah's face lit up with a real smile. "Lead the way." We turned, we walked, we merged back into the flow of the market, into the sunlight and the smell of bread. I did not look back. I felt Sarah's hand tighten around mine, a wordless question. "It's okay," I said, and I meant it in every way. "It's all okay." I felt her gaze on my back for a few more seconds, a phantom weight, and then it was gone, dissolved into the noise and life of the perfect present morning. There was no victory in it, no lingering sting. There was only the warm, solid reality of Sarah's hand in mine, the list in my basket, and the profound, peaceful understanding that the past was finally and completely just that. A closed chapter in a book I was no longer reading. I was free, and I had been for a long, long time. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.